But turn with me to John chapter 8. John chapter 8. And I'll get somebody to read this who can find John chapter 8 first. It's a lovely verse, and we'll build upon it with a couple of others as well. So if you're in the mood to read, then there'll be a couple of other opportunities for you to participate as well. We're going to continue with this little mini-series about knowledge, only going back to what we want to talk about when it relates to knowledge. We're putting knowledge into action. I think one of the big problems within Christianity is we're really clever people. We know a lot of stuff. We sing a lot of pretty songs. But when it comes right down to applying what we know, we have a breakdown. And you go into the average church, and ours really is probably not exceptional when it comes to this, and it's only a small minority of people who are doing work. A lot of people attend. Some of the churches that are out there have enormous attendances, but if you were to speak to their minister and ask how many people actually are involved in the work, you would see that percentage shrink enormously. And I have the idea that if as a church all of us got involved, our potential of doing work for God would exceed some of the larger churches. Those of you that are clever with math know how that works. But if you have a large congregation with a small doing the work, but if you have a small congregation with everyone doing the work, you equalize. You have that kind of potential. So putting knowledge into practice is a big, I want to say burden, but it's certainly a goal, a dream, a vision of mine, is to see us be able to get involved in doing the work for God. And that's where this comes from. John chapter 8, someone read out, for the sake of it, verses 31 and 32. Who's got that? Would like to read it? Jen?
So the Jews had believed him. Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free."
Okay. To the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples." The difference in being a disciple was holding to the teachings. And then it says, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." The title that I chose for the message is "Knowledge is Releasing." What you know can release you to do things. And I just want to make a few statements about it. You are bound whether you believe it or realize it or not. So many people don't think that they're bound. Just think of it in relation to addiction. If you talk to the average, normal alcoholic and ask them if they're an alcoholic, they'll tell you no. If you speak to a person who smokes and said, "Could you quit?" And they'd say, "Oh yeah, I could quit anytime I want to." And we all know the struggle which is involved in stopping some of these things. So many people in the world are bound and think they aren't. They don't realize that they actually have this bind about them. And when it comes to knowing the truth of the gospel, there is nothing more liberating than being able to have the truth and knowing the truth. Relationships today are very much built upon romance and attraction, and there's this, we have a word that's called chemistry, people who have chemistry that puts things together. And yet what people really find most important, and if you look at all the relationship sites and people who really would like to get connected with somebody, the thing that slips to the highest in most categories is honesty. I just want to know that what they're telling me is true. Because if I can really know that they're honest, even if they tell me, "You got a spot on your nose." This was awful yesterday. I was in Parkrun and there was a lady running around and she had a big black spot on her nose. And I kept thinking, I wanted to tell her, but then I thought maybe it's supposed to be there. I don't know. Just don't say anything. But there's part of you that wants to say, I want to be honest about things about your character, but you might not take it really well. And so sometimes I'll hold that back. I remember times when there were people that I thought I would like to be friends with, but there was a resistance because there were some difficulties about their own character. And so I was a bit hesitant to get into those relationships. If I could have been open and honest and communicated about myself and about them, there might have been the possibility of a relationship bond, because it would have been built on something other than looks, attraction, chemistry. It would have been built on honesty. Do you know, I have some very good friends who are atheists. I have some very good friends who are anti-God. And I could list others, and some of you will have the same. You say, how can you become friends with somebody who has so diametrically different, diametrically opposed, to you and your views? And I say one thing: honesty. We have an honesty about it, that I know that what he's telling me is true. And he knows that what I'm telling him isn't built upon something somebody else has told me. It's built upon the truth that I believe. I even had somebody over the last week say to me, and this was out of the blue, somebody that I have known to be atheist, who said to me these words: I want to know more about your faith. That's so loaded. And I think, why is that? Just because they know that I'm going to be honest with them about my faith. I'm not going to be pushy. I'm just going to tell them what I have in the way of a truth from the Word. So it is a clear biblical teaching that truth is releasing. It will let you go. Look at two other verses. Two of you can maybe scramble for these. Galatians chapter 3 and verse 1. And Colossians chapter 1 and verse 6. Galatians chapter 3 and verse 1, and Colossians chapter 1 and verse 6. Who wants to read one of those? Let's do the Galatians first. Who has Galatians? Yeah, Nathan.
You foolish Galatians, who has bewitched you, before whose eyes Jesus Christ was publicly portrayed as crucified?
It's interesting. Paul calls them foolish Galatians, and then he says they've been bewitched because they somehow have been led away from believing the truth. Bewitched. We don't realize probably enough just how much influence Satan has in distorting the truth. When it comes to the truth today, we often would view it as a black and white thing. We would say there is truth and then there is error. And yet Satan loves to insert that gray area, and we call it half-truth. You go back into the Old Testament and you see people who have deceived based upon a half-truth. You see Abraham and Sarah. She's my sister. It's half true, and a lot of the deceit which came out was based upon half-truths. And I think when we see these words, Paul is highlighting the fact that Satan actually bewitches. You've been bewitched to believe these things. Christians, let me be blunt, let me be brutally honest, as we like to say. We have Christians who follow zodiac signs, who read horoscopes, just in case it might be right, because it might tell me what's going to happen tomorrow, and if I can get any clue as to what might happen tomorrow, never considering that maybe the source isn't God, isn't right. And so you find Christians making compromises and doing things that they wouldn't otherwise do, but they kind of, we call it, it's a gray area. Can participate in that, but it's not bad, because it's kind of, and then you get some who will actually administer these kinds of things. Did you know that there are mediums that people can go to who claim to be Christians. So, oh, well, that's okay then. Okay? You know, she's a Christian. She can read my palm. She can, put out the tarot cards, and it's okay because she's a Christian. Some of you don't care. But there is that aspect which says Satan is very good at bewitching us and tricking us. If it came to poison, if you had somebody walk in who had a red suit on and horns and offered you candy, would you take it from them? So, it's candy. Yeah. If he says it's good and gives it to somebody and they don't pass out dead, would you give it? The idea is Satan, if he's giving you something good, you can consider, actually, maybe I can take that because it's okay, it's good, instead of considering the source. I used to like to say, if a needle can be inserted into your vein, anything can be pumped into it. Eventually, you know that there can be anything pumped into you if you consider that that source is acceptable. Be careful with Satan's bewitching of you, that you would believe an error. Okay, look at Colossians chapter 1. Somebody read verse 6. Got somebody with that one? Yeah, Caroline.
That has come to you. In the same way, the gospel is bearing fruit and growing throughout the whole world, just as it has been doing among you since the day you heard it and truly understood God's grace.
Okay, so you have fruit that's growing based upon the gospel, just as it's been doing among you since the day you heard it, understood God's grace in all its truth. Grace, truth, grows. It has an ability to take root and spring forth and become more than it is. This is a simple formula. Some things kill, and some things help. It will help make you grow. Some medicines are poisonous, some are healing. Some have healing properties to them. The difficult thing to realize sometimes is that they often look very similar. They look alike. So how can you know the difference? Well, through the gospel, you can know them, the Bible teaches, by their fruits. One of the ways in which you can tell often, and of course in the olden days we used to have people who would be food testers for kings, You want to know if this food is poisonous? Feed it to somebody and see if they die. I've used that. If you feed it to them and they live, then you go, it's okay, you can have that. There is a fruit about truth that says the truth is releasing and will actually help you grow and help you develop, help more come from you. Error, evil will destroy you. I just have 3 points I want to share. Those were the verses we're going to build on. And just 3 brief points when it comes to the releasing. What do we as Christians, as people, need releasing from? Very basic things. Number 1, evil passions. Evil desires. Desires that we shouldn't have. Passions is an interesting word. We use it often in relation to people who become obsessed about something. But a passion is something that you want really, really bad. And you see, Satan is really good at discovering our passions. All of us have weaknesses in this room. Nobody doesn't have a weakness. You have a weakness, even if it's acceptable. But some people, it's chocolate. They just have a difficulty when it comes to chocolate. They can't say no to chocolate. Some, it's shoes. It's really funny. You get some, ladies who don't need shoes. I say ladies. I'm probably bad at it as well. But they don't need it, but they see a pair and they think, oh, I can justify getting those too. I got another outfit that would go for. And others, it's handbags. It can be food. It can be cars. It can be, I just got a car a year ago, but there's a new model out. Oh, let's get on another one. How about mobile phones? just got a new mobile phone, but they've come out with a new one. And wow, what it will do, And there's this, Satan is great at discovering and capitalizing on what our passions are. What is it we just will be drawn to? And just when we think we have enough, he'll tempt us to want more. When it comes to releasing, there is an ability in the truth of the gospel, if you read through Scripture, that there is a releasing from that. How many of us would like to be released from the burden of some of our passions? I was visiting with the police this week and brought in the food box. And it was interesting that one of the things that we put in our food box is chocolate. And I took all this stuff into the food box and said to them that it was restocked. And then mentioned to a few of those who were there, there's even some chocolate in. At one stage, one of the officers says, "No, he's fine. I'm on a diet, and I'm doing really well, and I've, lost X amount, and I'm healthy since the 1st of January, and I'm doing really good." And you could just see he was doing really well. But when I mentioned chocolate, it was like, chocolate is in there too, right? You could just see the wheels begin to turn in his compromising, haven't had anything today, maybe. Breakfast was a bit low, working a bit late. All of those things that we begin to justify. And all of us have something we can be tempted with. And sadly, Satan knows what that is. God does too. And he says you can be released from it. Second thing, corrupt, this is a big word, corrupt propensities. Easily defined, that's the natural tendencies that we have to do things. We all have things that we do naturally. Some of us have natural abilities. Some of us have natural failures, natural things that we're not very good at. Things that we could easily fall over on. How would you like to be released from the things which are part of your nature which drag you down? Things which naturally are difficult for you. And God says you have the ability within the truth to be released from that. Not just released from doing bad things, but released to do good things. If I were to ask you certain things, I spoke to a lady yesterday at Park Run who was standing by the cake table, best place to be, and I said, "Do you run?" No, I don't run. And I said, "All right." And she said, "My body isn't made for running." And I said, "Okay." I mean, I wasn't going to argue, but there was part of me that wanted to challenge it a bit. And I said, "Well, why'd you say that? Why is your body?" And it was interesting that by the end of the discussion, she was beginning to consider that maybe she might be able to give this a try. If there were no expectations, if there were no time limits that you had to have, if you could go at your own pace, maybe I could do that. And suddenly there was this ability that you could see beyond what you think are your own limitations. And that weaves through every area of your life. Think about work. Think about the things that you say, "Oh, I'd love to do that, but I just can't. I can't." We sometimes block ourselves from abilities that God says, I can help you do that. Do you remember the presentation a minute ago? There was part of me that was saying, "This is impossible," which drove me forward to say, "So God, you're going to have to do this. If this is going to work, if I'm going to end up there." You'll laugh when I say this, but I kissed my girls goodbye when I left. And I don't mean I'll see you later. I didn't know if I was going to make it back. But there was part of me going, I believe God wants me to go so bad that I'm just going to go and I'm going to see and hopefully I'll come back. Looking at it in hindsight, I say, wow, the things that God put into place to get me there were all things that I could not have arranged it. Oh, I'm going to ride this train where there's going to be 2 Tuvans. One's going to be a Buddhist translator. Oh, she's going to go with you to a Christian church and translate for you at a Christian church. That just doesn't happen. But with God, God can do anything, and that's exactly what happened. I needed to get to Chinatown to get a van. I ended up that God brought the van to the train station because of the lady that was on the train with me had arranged it to be picked up there. That doesn't happen. Let God draw your limitations instead of you. Just allow yourself the language to say, God, if you want me to do that, I believe you can do anything. You can do that if you want to do that. And then believe that he can. Believe that he can. I'm not saying he always will. Believe that he can, and just let him do what he wants to do with you. The third and last one is groveling views. I like the word grovel. I've learned that one since I've been in Britain. There's lots of groveling in Britain. But groveling views. This is where you seek forgiveness or favors, looking for approval. This is the kind of person who says, oh, I'm really, really sorry, but can I have being released from the need to grovel, the need to have to constantly be seeking other people's approval, being released from your own shortcoming, your own lack of confidence. Letting God put the confidence in you to do the things that he wants to do, so that you don't have to keep making excuses, keep presenting yourselves to God and saying, God, I would do that, but I just can't do that. And God says, just let me limit you in what you can and can't do. I feel like most of you will know that there was a time when I had a heart attack. It's awful. Don't want to remember that. But after I had that heart attack, there was the realization that I might be greatly limited in what I could do afterwards. I knew people who had great limitations put on them. And there was also part of me thinking, God, I've also seen people who came out the other side of a heart attack and were better off, and ran a marathon, and did crazy things. And I was thinking to myself, God, kind of like to be like that. When I used to walk the girls to primary school, which was very, very close by, my left leg, just here, used to go numb. I thought I was just getting old. Really, it's like, there's something maybe pinching a nerve somehow. Didn't realize it was a blood flow issue. Didn't realize that it was an early sign that something wasn't completely right. After I had the heart attack and after I had the procedure, it never happens anymore. Used to be I'd sneeze in the living room. When I sneeze, I like to get attention. I'm one of those, I don't go, chew, chew. I saw one in London the other day. It was really cute. This girl on the tube, she sneezed about 4 times and it was hardly noticeable. I'm the one who goes, and when I do that, when I do that, it hurt. It hurt when I'd sneeze. I go, oh, and my wife and the girls would get used to me sneezing and going, oh, like that. Now I sneeze and there's nothing. And I think, there was something going on inside of me. I came out the other side actually better off than I was before. And now, good grief, people look at my schedule and I say, I'm doing twice as much now as I was doing before the heart attack, because I just believed that it was possible. And I'm not saying it is with everybody, but allow yourself to be released, to do things more. Listen, this will apply to you. That was all about me. There are things which have caused you to get down and to stumble. and they're reasonable. It's reasonable. Nobody looks at you and goes, "Oh, you have no excuse." They all look at what's happened to you and they say, "You have every reason to feel the way you do." Why not consider the possibility that you're better off after? What do I mean? I mean, I lost a job. Financially, I am really, really strapped. And you say, "Yeah, I know. Just think of the possibilities now. You can go anywhere. You can do anything." Wait, I'm being negative here. Look at the possibilities. There was a post yesterday on the suicide support group page of a lady whose husband is now passed away. And it was a positive post. At first I had to read it and do a double take and thought, what? She said, actually, he was so oppressive and it was so bad, and he was released from the difficulties that he had, but also as a home, it is so much more peace. And I'm really sorry to be saying this, but actually it's just so peaceful and wonderful. And I said, you're in a safe environment to say that. It's okay. You can say that here. These people will understand. What if we allowed ourselves, even in the worst situations in our lives, to say, all things work together for good to those who love God? All things, the worst things that happen to me, this is actually going to be okay. God is actually still in control. I'm not going to look at every negative as something that Satan is driving me down with, even though he'd love to have that happen. I'm also going to see God saying, this is an opportunity, and I'm giving you that opportunity to learn from this and to grow from it and to become better and to do more. I sound like an American TV preacher now, so I'll quit. Let's pray.